what is the Bagua? And we're going deep into the weeds here. Right? So the Bagua is an arrangement of 8 trigrams placed in a certain order. Each trigram is a representation of 3 lines of either yin or yang energy. And they're read top to bottom. Right? So it's not just a single, it's not just a thing, it's a progression. There's a time element in it, in the sense that you start reading the bottom one, and then the middle, and then the top. So what do we know? They're alternating yin and yang energies. Well, what's one of the main definition or characteristics of yang energy? Bright, it's linear, it's piercing, it's direct, it's far. Well, what's one of the characteristics of yin energy? It's heavy, it's short, it's round, it's absorbing, right? Yin and yang. So right there we have our separation. Something else that we know, because it's in the Tai Chi classics, attack is square, defense is round. Right, so those are the shapes that we're working with. So, and it makes sense. If you're going to attack, it's going to usually be in a straight line. If you're going to deflect, it's going to be in a circle. So far that makes sense. So now we can start constructing we can start stacking yin and yang energy. So, for example, if I were to say, okay, a demonstration of yang energy, push, a punch, right? It's direct, piercing. That's clearest demonstration yang energy. Clearest demonstration of yin energy is rollback, absorbing, deflecting, whether you're not blocking anything, you're absorbing the energy and maybe redirecting. That's yin. So now we take this energy and go, okay, what are other possibilities? How can I make that more complicated than simply yin or yang? Well, we can start stacking. So we can have, and this is actually, Confucius is the one who started playing with all of this, or at least that we have written down, where you start talking about greater yin, greater yang, lesser yin, lesser yang. And all it is simply saying, okay, well, I have yang energy. What happens if I have yang and yang energy? So 2 lines, each expressing yang. Well, for example, punch, yang energy. But what happens if I have yang and then I add a yin energy? So the second line is yin. Well, that means I would start with a punch, but the end would be yin in quality, right? So that could be something that's, I don't know, you'd start pushing, but then it's heavy and low, right? Because your second part of the move would have yin qualities, even though it started with yang qualities. And then you do the same thing with yin. You have greater yin, greater yang, and lesser yin. So what would be greater yin would be yin and yin. So all yin qualities, so completely deflecting. But what would be lesser yin? So that's yin quality, but then it ends with yang energy. So that would be something where you deflect and then you push, for example, right? So that would be lesser yin. So now you see how we're describing qualities simply by stacking these ideas. And the only question we're asking is, what would happen if we add a layer of complexity, right? Because yin or yang is simple. If we have yin-yin, yin-yang, right? If we have 4 possibilities with greater yin, lesser yin, greater yang, lesser yang, that's nice, but it's only 4 possibilities. So if we add a third layer of complexity, now we have our trigrams, which means we're saying, okay, what's yang plus yang plus yang? Or what's yang plus yin plus yang? And then we can do that, and there's 8 possibilities. That's how we get to the 8 moves, is because there's only 8 variations when you have trigrams. And now we have something interesting. So for example, again, what's a trigram with all yang? Yang, 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 so pure yang energy. So then again, a punch, right? You're sending straight yang energy. It's piercing, it's linear, it's far. That's it. What's pure yin? Well, again, rollback, right? Where energy is coming towards you and you're just absorbing it, letting it through, pure yin. But now we can ask, okay, since we have a trigram, I mean, we have the Bagua and trigrams, we have the Cardinal Directions, the 2 on the sides, right? Because you have pure yin, pure yang. 2 on the sides would be yang, yin, yang. That means it starts as an attack, yang, piercing, but the middle is yin and the end is yang, right? So it's an attack, but at the core, there's yin energy. Well, that's press, right? You rise up and you get a strike, but instead of doing a strike that's far, which would be incorrect, yin in the center, which means now the attack is low, deep, short, round in energy. But it ends yang, which means the end is still shooting out an energy. And so press is often used as a way of like breaking the root of your opponent, right? So you're not trying to punch through them, you're trying to shake them. You're trying to break their root, break their balance, essentially. So it's, right, you're still shooting energy, but you're not going through, it's like dropping an anvil on somebody, just going, right, press. So you start with yang, there's still a projection of energy, but the middle quality is yin, and it ends in yang. Same on the other side of our Bagua. Yin, yang, yin. That's our trigram. What does that mean? Well, we know yin is absorbing, right? But yang means now we're projecting energy. And then we finish with yin, which is again absorbing, rounded. Well, that's ward off, right? Because you go in, you stick, and then you brush out of the way, but then you don't shoot the energy through. You continue that circular motion, right? Ward off is a push. Is not push, it's absorb and brush away, ward off, right? So that's our 4 cardinal direction. Now already, there will be some objections here. And that's because in the TaiChi classics, they talk about how the 2 opposite moves are roll back and ward off, as if ward off was the fully yang move. That's what's written in the classics. And I'm going to say it's wrong. And I'm going to say it's wrong because it's pretty simple once you start thinking about it. In the description, in like the song of ward off, it talks about how it's like pushing down on a boat that then bounces back, right? So you have a boat floating on water, you push it down, but the water itself pushes back up. There's a lot of description of ward off as like bouncing off a ball. Well, if you're absorbing first, right? If you're a ball and first you absorb and then send it back, the first quality of energy is absorption. That is not yang, that is yin, which means ward off cannot be full yang, because the first quality in all description of ward off are absorption. And it makes sense because ward off is somebody pushes you, first you stick, you feel the direction of the energy so that you can decide which direction you're going to ward it off. So the first thing that you do is listen. The first thing that you do is you stick. All those are yin qualities. If it was full yang, like a punch, you don't care what directions are coming through. You just punch. That's yang. So ward off cannot be full yang. And I do think that when you take into account the history, for example, if you do doing the Michuan style, the whole point is that it's a hidden tradition. The whole point is that they've essentially, Yang Liuchun watered down his initial teachings. So you can't trust what is in the majority of the texts that are out there because they're describing something which has been purposefully muddled so that it's not as effective. Saying that ward off is full yang is definitely, in my view, one of these kind of obfuscation where the techniques themselves were hidden because it makes no sense, right? What makes sense is push is full yang, roll back is full yin. And then you have ward off and press are the 2 other cardinal moves because they each have a permutation of yin and yang within them. So they're not pure yin and yang. What that also tells us is that any move that starts with yang is an attack. Any move that starts with yin is a deflection. So push and press are both attacks. Rollback, ward off are both deflections, right? Makes sense. You can't do a rollback if nobody attacks you. So it's always a deflection. Same with ward off. If you're doing ward off and you just hitting somebody in the ribs, even though it looks just the same, that's a push. That's a strike. If there's somebody who pushes you and then you deflect and then you push, that's a ward off. Those are the distinctions, right? Is it yin or is it yang? Does it start yin? Does it start yang? That's the question you want to ask. So now it leaves us with the 4 other moves that are to the diagonals, right? In our Bagua.